Dr. Kayla Morrison stood before the crystalline tower and felt impossibly small. The Galactic Historical Archive stretched upward until it disappeared into Viridian Prime's violet sky. Its transparent walls filled with dancing lights, memories of 10,000 species across 50,000 years. Impressive, is it not? A voice spoke directly into her mind. Kayla turned and saw nothing. Then the air shimmered, and a being of pure golden light materialized before her. It had no fixed form, constantly shifting between shapes, sometimes humanoid, sometimes geometric, sometimes resembling creatures from worlds she had never seen. "I am Archon Velthor-X, Keeper of Memories," the being said. "Welcome, Dr. Morrison. You are the first human to enter these halls." Kayla bowed respectfully. "Thank you for inviting us. This is a great honor. Come, the ceremony begins soon." Velthor-X floated forward, and Kayla followed. Inside, the archive was even more breathtaking. Massive chambers stretched in all directions, their walls displaying memories like windows into the past. She saw the Korathi building their first starships, the Zenthi discovering faster-than-light travel, the Vrin making first contact with neighboring species. Hundreds of beings from dozens of species gathered in the central hall. Some walked on legs, others floated, and a few existed as patterns of light or sound. All had come to witness the memory contribution ceremony. "Every century, we gather to add new memories to the archive," Velthor-X explained. "Each species shares their recent history, their achievements, their progress. Today, you will witness how we preserve the story of galactic civilization." A platform rose from the floor. A tall, insect-like Korathi approached it, her crystalline exoskeleton reflecting rainbow colors. She placed her clawed hands on the platform's surface. "The Korathi contribute memories of the past 100 years," she announced in a clicking voice that the translation device rendered into English. Light flowed from her body into the platform. Images appeared in the air above cities being built, children learning in schools, festivals celebrating peace, scientists making discoveries. Everything was beautiful, hopeful, and inspiring. The memories ended. The Korathi stepped down, and applause filled the hall, though many species expressed approval through light patterns, sound frequencies, or scent releases rather than clapping. One by one, other species approached. The Zenthi shared memories of medical breakthroughs. The Vrin displayed their expanding trade networks. Each presentation showed only progress, success, and achievement. Kayla noticed something odd. Where were the struggles? The conflicts? The mistakes that led to those breakthroughs? Every species presented perfect histories with no problems, no pain, and no failure. "Dr. Morrison," Velthor-X said, "humanity's turn approaches. Please prepare your contribution." Kayla walked to the platform, carrying a small data device containing human history, but she hesitated before connecting it. "Archon Velthor-X," she said loudly, "may I ask a question first?" The golden being floated closer. "Speak. I notice all the memories shared today show only positive events, but history includes difficult moments too. Where are those memories?" Murmurs rippled through the crowd, or their various species equivalents of murmuring. "We practice memory refinement," Velthor-X explained patiently. "Before archiving, each species filters their memories to remove negative emotions. Pain, shame, regret, anger, these serve no purpose. We preserve knowledge while eliminating suffering. It is the enlightened way." Kayla's heart sank. "You delete the painful parts?" "Not delete. Refine. We keep the factual information, but remove the emotional distress. Why would any species choose to preserve suffering?" Velthor-X seemed genuinely puzzled. "Can you show me?" Kayla asked. "What kinds of memories are filtered out?" Velthorax hesitated, then gestured. A side screen appeared, displaying lists of refined memories. Kayla read, in growing disbelief. The Korathi had filtered out an entire civil war that killed millions. The Zenthi had erased memories of a plague that devastated their homeworld. The Vryn had removed all records of a colonial period where they exploited smaller species. These are important events, Kayla said slowly. How can you understand your history without them? We retain the factual data. A Zenthi historian interjected, his blue skin pulsing with what Kayla's translator interpreted as annoyance. We know the war happened. We know the plague occurred. But why preserve the trauma? Why burden future generations with ancestral pain? Because... Kayla stopped herself. This required more than a quick answer. May I connect my data without refinement? The hall erupted in shocked responses. Velthorax's light flickered rapidly. Unrefined memories? That is unprecedented. Barbaric, even. If you want to understand humanity, Kayla said firmly, you need to see us as we truly are. Complete with our pain. Velthorax floated in silence for a long moment. Finally, he spoke. Very well. Let us witness human stubbornness in its full glory. Kayla connected her device. Unlike the other presentations, human history appeared unfiltered, wars and peaces, cruelties and kindnesses, destructions and creations. The audience saw the Holocaust, slavery, genocides, and environmental devastation. But they also saw humans building memorials to victims, teaching painful lessons to children, creating museums dedicated to remembering atrocities. When the presentation ended, the hall was silent. Many aliens looked disturbed. Some had activated emotional dampeners. Velthorax spoke quietly, which somehow made his words more powerful. Dr. Morrison, I must ask you directly. Why do humans remember pain? Every civilized species has learned to let go of suffering. We have achieved 10,000 years of galactic peace by forgetting our darkest hours. Yet humans deliberately preserve agony, teach it to their young, and build monuments to misery. Explain this madness. Kayla met the ancient being's gaze, or where she sensed his attention focused. Honest? Velthorax's form rippled with confusion. What does honesty require suffering? Give me 5 cycles, Kayla said. Let me show you why humans remember what others forget. If I cannot prove our philosophy has value, humanity will accept exclusion from the archive. The alien historians whispered among themselves. Velthorax considered for a very long moment. Agreed, he finally said. 5 cycles to justify humanity's strange choice. Fail, and humans will be deemed too primitive for archive membership. Begin tomorrow. Kayla returned to the archive the next morning. Velthorax waited in a private chamber, his golden light dimmer than before, as if he had spent the night in deep thought. I have granted you access to the restricted section, he said without greeting. You may view the original, unrefined memories, those that were filtered before archiving. But I warn you, Dr. Morrison, these memories were deleted for good reason. They contain nothing but pain. Thank you, Kayla said simply. Velthorax led her to a sealed vault deep within the archive. The walls here were dark, not filled with dancing lights like the rest of the building. When the vault opened, Kayla saw rows of containment units holding what looked like crystallized shadows. These are memory fragments, Velthorax explained. Pieces of history that species chose to refine away. We keep them locked here, never displayed, never shared. What do you hope to find? Patterns, Kayla said. She began with the Korathi Civil War. When she accessed the unrefined memory, she experienced it fully, the fear, the anger, the brother fighting against brother over resources and territory. 600 years ago, the war had nearly destroyed their civilization. 3 million Korathi died before peace was finally achieved. Kayla checked current Korathi news reports. Her translator worked overtime as she read about growing tensions along territorial borders, disputes over mining rights, and military buildup on both sides of an old boundary line. "The same patterns," she whispered. "They're repeating." "What do you mean?" Velthorax asked. Kayla showed him the comparison. 600 years ago, they fought over resources and territory. Now, they're having the exact same disputes. Because they refined away the memories of how that conflict started, they don't recognize the warning signs. "That is coincidence," Velthorax said. But his light flickered, uncertainly. Kayla moved to the Zenthi plague memories. The unrefined version was horrifying, a disease that killed 30% of their population before doctors found a cure. She experienced the terror, the grief, the desperate search for solutions. Then she checked Zenthi medical records. A new outbreak had appeared 3 months ago. The symptoms were nearly identical to the ancient plague, but Zenthi doctors were treating it as an unknown disease. They were trying treatments that had already failed centuries before. "They're making the same mistakes," Kayla said. "Because they don't remember what failed last time. They're wasting time repeating those failures. People are dying who could be saved." Velthorax's light grew dimmer. "Continue." The Vryn colonial period was next. The unrefined memories showed the Vryn exploiting smaller species, taking their resources while calling it mutual benefit. Eventually, the exploited species rebelled, and the Vryn barely survived the resulting war. Kayla pulled up current Vryn business agreements. They were offering economic partnerships to developing species agreements that gave the Vryn control over resources while providing minimal compensation. The smaller species were beginning to protest. "History, repeating again," Kayla said. "They refined away the memory of their colonial crimes, so they don't see that they're recreating the same exploitative system. Another rebellion is building." Quote, 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 quote. She turned to face Velthorax directly. "You asked why humans remember pain. This is why. We learned that forgetting our mistakes doesn't prevent us from making them again. It guarantees we will. But the emotional cost," Velthorax began. "Is worth it," Kayla interrupted. "Let me show you human history." She pulled up images on the archive's display system. A memorial in Germany, covered with names of Holocaust victims. A museum in America dedicated to slavery. Monuments in Asia, remembering wars and famines. After World War II, humans created the United Nations, she explained. "We built it because we remembered how terrible war was. We taught our children about the Holocaust, so they would recognize the warning signs of genocide. We studied our environmental destruction, so we could prevent future disasters." "You inflict trauma on your young?" A Zenthi observer who had joined them asked, horrified. "We teach them truth," Kayla corrected. "Yes, it's uncomfortable. Yes, it's painful. But because we remember slavery, we recognize injustice. Because we remember war, we value peace. Because we remember genocide, we act when we see persecution beginning." She showed them more examples. How remembering the Great Depression led to economic safety systems. How remembering pollution disasters led to environmental protection laws. How remembering civil rights struggles led to expanded freedoms. Every positive change in human civilization came from remembering something negative, Kayla said. "We don't preserve pain because we enjoy suffering. We preserve it because it teaches us what to avoid." Other alien historians had gathered at the vault entrance, drawn by the discussion. A young Korathi named Siventh spoke up. "But our teachers say the refinement process freed us from the burden of ancestral guilt, that we could move forward, unburdened." "And are you moving forward?" Kayla asked gently. "Or are you walking in circles, returning to the same conflicts every 600 years? Siventh's crystalline body went very still. Around the room, other aliens shifted uncomfortably. Seeds of doubt were growing. "This is dangerous," Velthorax said quietly. You are disrupting 10,000 years of galactic stability. No, Kayla replied. I'm showing you that your stability is an illusion. You haven't eliminated conflict. You've just eliminated your ability to recognize it coming. Prove it, Velthorax challenged. Show me that remembering pain actually changes behavior. Show me that your human suffering serves a purpose beyond sentimentality. Kayla took a deep breath. What she was about to offer would be the most difficult thing she had ever done. But it was necessary. Tomorrow, I will share a personal memory with you, she said. Not from human history books, but from my own life. An unrefined memory of loss and pain. Experience it with me, and then decide if you still think forgetting is the enlightened choice. Velthorax's light brightened with curiosity and concern. What memory? The death of my daughter, Kayla said softly, and how that pain changed everything I became afterward. The room fell silent. No one had ever volunteered to share personal tragedy before. In galactic civilization, such vulnerability was unthinkable. I will witness it, Velthorax finally said. Tomorrow, you will show me this human grief, and we shall see if it contains wisdom or merely weakness. The central chamber was full. Word had spread throughout the archive that a human would share an unrefined personal memory, something no species had done in thousands of years. Hundreds of historians gathered, their curiosity overcoming their discomfort. Kayla stood at the memory platform, her hands trembling slightly. Beside her, Velthorax's golden light pulsed with anticipation. Are you certain? The ancient being asked. Once shared through our technology, everyone present will experience your memory as if it were their own. They will feel what you felt. I'm certain, Kayla said, though her voice wavered. This is the only way you'll understand. She placed her hands on the platform. The technology connected with her neural pathways, accessing memories stored deep in her mind. She found the one she needed, 20 years old, but still sharp as broken glass. Her name was Sarah, Kayla said aloud. She was 16. This is the day she died. The memory began. Suddenly, everyone in the chamber was Kayla Morrison, experiencing her life 20 years ago. They felt her exhaustion from a long work week. They felt her hesitation when Sarah asked to borrow the car on a rainy evening. They felt her guilt as she said yes, too tired to argue, trusting that Sarah would be careful. The aliens experienced the phone call 2 hours later. The cold voice of the police officer. The words that didn't make sense at first. There's been an accident. Bye. They felt Kayla's heart stop. They felt her hands shaking as she grabbed her keys. They felt the terrible drive to the hospital, praying desperately, bargaining with whatever gods might listen. In the hospital, they saw Sarah on the bed, broken and fading. They felt the doctor's hand on Kayla's shoulder, heard the words, internal injuries, and nothing we can do. They experienced Kayla holding her daughter's hand as Sarah's breathing grew weaker. Mom, Sarah's voice, so small. I'm sorry about the car. Don't worry about the car, baby. Just hold on. I'm tired, Mom. I know, sweetheart. I know. They felt Sarah's hand go limp. They heard the flatline sound. They experienced grief so intense it felt physical, a crushing weight on the chest, a scream trapped in the throat. A world suddenly emptied of color and meaning. The memory continued through the funeral. Through the first night in a house too quiet. Through the mornings waking up and forgetting for one blessed moment. Then remembering and feeling the loss all over again. Through months of barely functioning, going through motions, wondering if the pain would ever stop. Around the chamber, aliens were reacting. Many had activated their emotional dampeners immediately. Some left, unable to handle the intensity. A few were making sounds, crying, keening, or whatever their species did when overwhelmed by sorrow. Velthorax remained, but his light had turned a deep crimson, pulsing erratically. He was experiencing human grief for the first time in 8,000 years of existence. The memory shifted forward. Years passing. Kayla attending a support group for parents who lost children. Kayla writing about her experience. Kayla speaking at schools about driver safety. Kayla sitting with other grieving parents, sharing the burden that only they could understand. They felt Kayla's purpose slowly rebuilding, not replacing the grief that never left but growing alongside it. They felt her helping a mother whose son had died, offering the kind of comfort only someone who understood could give. They felt her satisfaction when a teenager she spoke to decided to wait for better weather before driving. The memory ended. The chamber slowly returned to normal. Kayla removed her hands from the platform, tears streaming down her face. She always cried when remembering Sarah. Many aliens remained silent, processing what they had experienced. Several were still visibly distressed. Velthorax's light had returned to gold, but it flickered weakly. Why? The ancient being's voice was barely a whisper. Why would you keep that memory? Why not refine it away? You could live without that pain. Kayla wiped her eyes. Because if I erased Sarah's death, I would erase everything that came after. I would erase the support group I joined, where I met people who became like family. I would erase the book I wrote that helped thousands of grieving parents. I would erase the school programs I started that saved other children's lives. She took a shaky breath. I would erase the advocacy work that changed driver safety laws in 3 states. I would erase the scholarship fund I created in Sarah's name. I would erase the children who are alive today because I spoke about what happened. But the pain, Siventh, the young Korathi historian, spoke up. His voice was choked with emotion, his species equivalent of crying. The pain made me pay attention, Kayla said. It made me take driver safety seriously. It made me value every moment with my other children. It made me understand grief in a way I never could have otherwise, which let me help others going through the same thing. She looked around the chamber. That's what pain does for humans. It teaches us. It changes us. Sometimes it breaks us. Yes. But often, it rebuilds us into something stronger, wiser, more compassionate. Velthorax was silent for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a weight it hadn't before. I must tell you something, Dr. Morrison. Something the archive has hidden for 10,000 years. The other historians stirred nervously. Whatever Velthorax was about to reveal, it was clearly forbidden knowledge. The archive itself was created after a great catastrophe, Velthorax said slowly. An event so terrible that the founding species chose to erase it completely. The memory refinement technology was built specifically to ensure no one would ever have to remember that tragedy. Kayla's eyes widened. What catastrophe? I don't know, Velthorax admitted. It was deleted before I was created. All I know is that somewhere in these vaults is the erased memory of the event that nearly destroyed galactic civilization. And the protocols that created this archive were designed to ensure no one ever accessed it. Then we need to find it, Kayla said urgently. Don't you see? You're repeating your greatest mistake right now, forgetting the very thing you need to remember most. The protocols forbid it, Velthorax said. Opening those memories could destroy everything. Keeping them closed already is, Kayla replied. That night, Kayla couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the erased catastrophe, the event so terrible that an entire galactic civilization had chosen to forget it completely. What could be so horrifying that thousands of species agreed to delete it from history? The next morning, she returned to the restricted vault. Velthorax was already there, his golden light dimmer than usual. I have been thinking about your words, he said quietly. For 8,000 years, I have served the archive without question. But last night, after experiencing your daughter's memory, I began to wonder, what if we were wrong? What if forgetting our greatest tragedy was our greatest mistake? Then help me find it, Kayla urged. Help me access the deleted memory. It is impossible. The security protocols can be bypassed, a voice interrupted. They turned to see Siventh, the young Korathi historian, standing at the vault entrance. Behind him were a dozen other young historians from various species. "We want to help," Siventh said. After witnessing Dr. Morrison's memory, we began researching our own species' deleted histories. We found the patterns she described. We're repeating our mistakes because we don't remember them. A Zenthi scientist stepped forward. I checked medical records. The current outbreak matches the ancient plague almost perfectly. If our doctors had access to the refined memories, they would have found the cure weeks ago. People are dying because we chose to forget. A Vrin economist added, "Our business partnerships are creating the same resentments that led to the colonial rebellion. I can see the warning signs clearly now, but our government can't see them because they don't remember." Velthorax's light flickered with emotion. "You understand what you're asking? If we access the forbidden memory, we could be exiled. The Archive Council could shut down this entire facility. Better to be exiled for seeking truth than honored for maintaining a lie," Siventh said firmly. Kayla smiled. "That's very human thinking. Perhaps humans aren't the only ones who value honesty." Siventh replied. Together, they began searching the deepest levels of the restricted vault. The archive security systems tried to stop them. But the young historians used their combined knowledge: Korathi energy manipulation, Zenthi bioneural coding, Vrin quantum mathematics, and human determination to bypass each layer of protection. Finally, they found it. A containment unit sealed with technology far more advanced than anything else in the archive. The label read, "First Memory Archive Foundation Event, Permanent Deletion Required." "This is it," Velthorax whispered. "The catastrophe that created the archive." "Can we access it?" Kayla asked. "The memory isn't completely deleted," the Zenthi scientist said, examining the readings. "There are fragments, pieces that survived the erasure process. If we reconstruct them carefully, we might see what happened." They worked for hours, piecing together memory fragments like a broken puzzle. 10,000 years ago, two powerful species, the Dral and the Morvith, went to war over resource rights. Both species considered themselves civilized and advanced. Both believed they had evolved beyond violence. Neither remembered their own violent histories because they had already begun refining away negative memories. The war started small, a dispute over mining rights. Diplomatic negotiations that failed because neither side remembered how past compromises had prevented conflicts. Small skirmishes that escalated because neither side recognized the warning signs of full-scale war. Within 5 years, the conflict had pulled in dozens of allied species. Weapons that had been developed for defense were used for offense. Entire planets were devastated. Billions died. The memory fragments showed civilization nearly collapsing. Star lanes closed. Trade networks destroyed. Species that had lived together peacefully for centuries, suddenly turning on each other. The war only ended when both original sides had destroyed themselves completely. The Dral and Morveth were extinct, casualties of their own conflict. The surviving species, traumatized and terrified, made a decision. They would create the archive to preserve knowledge, but they would refine away all negative memories. They would engineer a peaceful civilization by forgetting violence was possible. They thought removing the memory of pain would remove pain itself, Kayla said softly. But they only removed the ability to recognize danger. Velthorax was silent, his light pulsing irregularly. Finally, he spoke. "Look at the causes. The resource disputes. The failed diplomacy. The escalation pattern." Kayla checked current galactic news and felt her blood run cold. It's happening again. The exact same pattern. The Korathi and Zenthi were approaching a 600-year cycle of territorial disputes. The Vrin's economic exploitation was creating resentment among smaller species. Several other species were having resource conflicts that diplomacy was failing to resolve. "We're not just repeating small mistakes," Siventh said, his voice shaking. "We're recreating the conditions that led to the original catastrophe. Because we don't remember it. We can't see it coming. The archive was supposed to prevent this," a Vryn historian said. "But all it did was delay it. We're walking toward the same disaster our ancestors faced." Velthorax's light suddenly flared bright. "We must share this. The entire galaxy needs to know." "The Council will never allow it," another historian warned. "They'll shut down the archive before letting this information spread. Then we broadcast it before they can stop us," Kayla said. "We send the unrefined memories, all of them, including the catastrophe, directly to every species in the galaxy. Let everyone see the truth." "That would cause chaos," Velthorax said. "Trillions of beings experiencing painful memories simultaneously. Governments could fall. Civilizations could fracture. Or they could finally learn," Kayla countered. "Right now, you're all walking blind toward a cliff edge." "Yes. Opening your eyes will be painful. But it's better than falling," Velthorax considered for a long moment. Around him, the young historians waited, their various forms tense with anticipation. "Dr. Morrison," Velthorax finally said, "you asked why humans remember pain. I think I finally understand. You remember because the alternative, forgetting and repeating, is worse." "Yes," Kayla said simply. "Then let us be honest," Velthorax declared. "Even if honesty breaks us, initiate the broadcast." Alarms began blaring throughout the archive. The Council had detected their activity, but it was too late. The broadcast was already beginning. Across the galaxy, trillions of beings were about to experience the truth their ancestors had hidden, and nothing would ever be the same. The broadcast spread across the galaxy like light through darkness. In homes, workplaces, and government chambers on thousands of worlds, beings suddenly experienced memories their species had deleted centuries ago. A Korathi general preparing military exercises suddenly remembered the Civil War, every battle, every loss, every moment of regret. She looked at her current deployment orders and saw the exact same mistakes beginning. She immediately ordered a stand-down and opened emergency communications with the opposing territory. A Zenthi doctor treating the mysterious outbreak accessed the ancient plague memories and recognized the symptoms instantly. Within hours, she had implemented the cure that worked 10 centuries before. Lives that would have been lost were saved. A Vryn corporate executive reviewing partnership contracts experienced the colonial period, felt the resentment of exploited species, witnessed the rebellion that nearly destroyed his civilization. He called an emergency board meeting and restructured every agreement to ensure genuine fairness. But not everyone reacted positively. Some governments panicked as citizens experienced traumatic historical events. Protests erupted on several worlds. A few leaders tried to shut down the broadcast, claiming it was an attack on galactic peace. In the archive, Kayla and her allies watched the chaos unfold through news feeds from across the galaxy. "What have we done?" a young historian whispered, watching footage of confused and frightened beings struggling with newly recovered memories. "We gave them the truth," Kayla said firmly. "What they do with it is their choice." Velthorax's light flickered rapidly, his species equivalent of anxiety. "The Council is demanding my immediate arrest. They're calling this the greatest crime in archive history." "Then we committed it together," Siventh said, standing beside the ancient being. The other young historians murmured, "Agreement." 3 days passed. The initial chaos began settling as beings processed their recovered memories. Something unexpected started happening. A Korathi teacher created a memorial for Civil War victims, the first memorial her species had built in 600 years. Students visited it, learning from history instead of repeating it. Zenthi medical schools began teaching about the ancient plague, ensuring future doctors would recognize similar diseases. The curriculum now included both successes and failures. Honest lessons from honest history. Vrin business leaders formed ethics committees, inviting representatives from smaller species to ensure partnerships were truly mutual. They weren't running from their colonial past, they were learning from it. On world after world, species began building museums, creating memorials, and teaching difficult truths to their young. The galaxy was learning what humanity had known for millennia, that remembering pain was the price of wisdom. The Archive Council arrived on Viridian Prime with security forces, demanding that Velthorax and the others face judgment. But when they entered the archive, they found something that stopped them. Thousands of beings from hundreds of species had gathered peacefully outside, holding signs and making speeches. They weren't protesting. They were thanking the historians for returning their true histories. "We thought we were advanced because we felt no pain," an elderly Korathi said to the cameras. "But we were just numb. Now we can feel again. Now we can learn again." A young Zenthi mother held her child. "My daughter will grow up knowing our real history, the mistakes, and the triumphs. She'll be wiser than I was." The council leader, an ancient Vrin named Executor Thalron, stood before Velthorax. "You violated every protocol. You unleashed chaos across the galaxy." "I unleashed truth," Velthorax replied calmly. "The chaos was already building. We just revealed it in time to prevent catastrophe." Kayla stepped forward. "Your protocols were created to prevent the pain of remembering, but they guaranteed you would repeat what you forgot. We didn't give the galaxy pain, we gave it the ability to avoid future pain through learning." Thalron was silent for a long moment. Finally, he spoke. "Show me the reconstructed memory. The original catastrophe." Velthorax shared the fragments they had pieced together. Thalron experienced the ancient war, the escalation, the devastation, the near collapse of civilization. When the memory ended, Thalron's aged form trembled. "I see the patterns in current events. We were walking the same path." "The Korathi general saw it too," Kayla said gently. She stopped military action because she recognized the warning signs. Across the galaxy, beings are making different choices because they finally remember the consequences. "But the emotional cost," Thalron began. "Is the price of wisdom," Velthorax interrupted. "I have existed for 8,000 years without pain. I thought that made me enlightened. But I was simply empty. These past days, experiencing true memory, both beautiful and terrible, I finally understand what it means to be truly alive." Thalron looked at the crowds outside, then back at the historians. "The council will need to deliberate." 2 weeks later, the decision came. The archive would not be shut down. Instead, it would be rebuilt based on human principles, complete, unrefined preservation of all memories, both joyful and painful. The new archive would be called the Archive of Honest Memory. Velthorax would remain as primary keeper, with Kayla as co-keeper. The young historians who helped would form a new council dedicated to teaching species how to process and learn from difficult memories. 1 year later, Kayla stood in a new section of the archive, the Hall of Remembrance. Species from across the galaxy had contributed memorials to their difficult histories. The Korathi Civil War Memorial stood beside the Zenthi Plague Monument. The Vrin had created a detailed exhibition about their colonial period, refusing to hide their ancestors' mistakes. But the centerpiece was smaller, more personal. A crystal structure containing the memory of Sarah Morrison, not as data, but as a memorial to one human's loss and the wisdom that came from it. Young beings from dozens of species visited daily, experiencing Kayla's grief and learning how pain could become purpose. Teachers brought students to understand that remembering suffering honored it, learned from it, and helped prevent it. Velthorax found Kayla standing before her daughter's memorial one afternoon. His golden light pulsed gently. He had learned to express emotion through color and intensity. A Korathi general prevented a war yesterday, he said. She told reporters she recognized the warning signs because she remembered history. A Zenthi researcher discovered a cure for a rare disease by studying ancient medical failures. A Vrin corporation restructured its entire business model to avoid repeating colonial exploitation. That's wonderful, Kayla said softly. They all cite the archive broadcast as the turning point, Velthorax continued. Beings who never knew pain are now learning from it. Species that forgot their mistakes are now remembering and avoiding them. You were right, Dr. Morrison. Honesty, even painful honesty, was the foundation we needed. Kayla placed her hand on the crystal containing Sarah's memory. Thank you, sweetheart. Your pain taught me. And now, it's teaching them. A group of young Zenthi students approached, their teacher guiding them. They stood before the memorial quietly, preparing to experience a human mother's grief. Is it difficult? One student asked Kayla, sharing this pain with strangers? Kayla smiled gently. It's the most important thing I've ever done. Because now, your generation will grow up understanding that suffering has meaning when we learn from it. You'll build a better galaxy than your ancestors could, because you won't repeat their forgotten mistakes. The students entered the memorial. Kayla watched them experience her loss, her grief, and her growth. She saw tears, or their species equivalent, on young faces, but she also saw understanding dawning. Velthorax's light glowed warm beside her. You asked if I understood why humans remember pain. I do now. You remember, because forgetting is not peace. It is merely postponed tragedy. You remember, because honesty, even when it hurts, is the only foundation for genuine growth. Yes, Kayla said. We remember because it keeps us honest, and honesty keeps us human. Outside the archive, the galaxy was changing. Memorials rose on 1,000 worlds. History classes taught complete truths instead of comfortable lies. Governments made different choices because they remembered consequences. The galaxy had learned humanity's hardest lesson, that the courage to remember pain was the beginning of wisdom. And in remembering, they found not weakness, but the strength to build a truly lasting peace. The archive of honest memory stood as a testament to a simple truth that those who forget history are condemned to repeat it. But those who remember it, even when it hurts, can finally learn to do better. And across the stars, beings who had lived without pain for millennia were discovering something profound. That a life without suffering might be comfortable, but a life that learns from suffering can be truly meaningful.